Leave her. She's already half dead.
Leave her. She's already half dead. Those were the last words her husband said as he abandoned her in a dilapidated building, alone, sick, and barely breathing. No lights, help with no one coming, just silence closing in on her with every shallow breath. But fate chose an unlikely witness that night. A dog, well-groomed, alert and restless, refused to walk away. It tugged at its leash, pulled against its owner's steps and led him somewhere he never planned to go. Through broken walls and forgotten corridors, the dog stopped and began to bark. What the billionaire found there would change 2 lives forever. Sometimes salvation doesn't come in human form. Sometimes loyalty has 4 legs. This is the story of a woman left to die, and the dog that refused to let her be forgotten. And today, it is being retold by me. Hello family, welcome back. Before we begin, I have a small but heartfelt request. Please subscribe. Your support is what keeps these stories alive. Every time you click that button, you're helping us share voices that would otherwise be forgotten and stories that deserve to be heard. And in the comments, tell us where you're watching from, because together we are not just telling stories, we are keeping hope alive. Claire Whitman learned something was wrong long before she had proof. It wasn't a single moment. It was a slow shift, like air leaving a room without a sound. Ethan used to look at her when she spoke. Now his eyes drifted elsewhere, to his phone, to the window, to the idea of something better waiting beyond her sentences. When she stopped talking mid-thought, he didn't notice. When she asked him if he was listening, he smiled and said yes, too quickly. She told herself this was marriage. This was what happened after years together. Love settled. Passion softened. That's what people said. But love wasn't supposed to feel like being slowly erased. That morning, Claire sat at the kitchen table with a cup of tea she hadn't touched. Her hands were wrapped around it anyway, as if warmth could still travel through porcelain and fix what was wrong inside her body. The nausea had been worse lately. The headaches too. Some days her chest felt tight, like breathing took effort. Ethan stood across the room, tying his tie. He looked perfect as always, not rushed, not stressed. He moved with the calm of someone who believed the world would always make room for him. "You're still doing that?" he asked, nodding toward the untouched tea. She blinked. "Doing what?" "Doctor visits, meds, tests." He sighed softly, as if the conversation tired him before it even started. "Claire, you're fine." She felt the familiar knot tighten in her stomach. "I'm not fine. You know I'm not. I've been dizzy for weeks." "You're anxious," he said easily. "You've always been sensitive." Sensitive. The word landed heavier than it should have. "My blood work wasn't normal," she said. "The doctor said—" "The doctor wants your money," Ethan interrupted. He finished his tie and checked his reflection. "They always do." She stared at him. "That's not fair." "What's not fair is watching you spiral over every ache," he replied. His voice stayed calm, measured, never raised. That was his talent. "You read too much online. You convince yourself you're sick, then suddenly you are." Claire opened her mouth, then closed it. She hated how easily he made her doubt herself. Hated how often she wondered if he was right. "I just want to keep going to my appointments," she said quietly. Ethan turned, finally looking at her fully. His expression softened in a way that used to make her feel safe. Now it made her uneasy. "Why?" he asked. So you can spend the rest of your life waiting for bad news that isn't coming. He walked closer, rested his hands on her shoulders. She noticed how light his touch felt. Claire, he said gently, you need to stop obsessing over symptoms. It's not healthy. The word obsessing stung. She nodded anyway. Later that day, she sat alone in the living room, flipping through mail that had piled up on the table. Most of it wasn't meant for her. Bank statements, legal envelopes, things that belonged to Ethan's world, not hers. One envelope was already open. Inside were papers covered in fine print. Her name appeared more than once. When Ethan came home, she held them up. What are these? He barely glanced at them. Oh, that. Just some paperwork. What kind of paperwork? Routine stuff, he said, taking off his jacket. Estate planning, tax adjustments. Her chest tightened. Why is my name on it? Because you're my wife, he said, like it should have been obvious. Everything's connected. She looks down at the pages again. The words blurred together, trusts, assets, authorizations. I don't understand this, she said. That's why you don't need to, Ethan replied. He reached for a pen and handed it to her. Just sign where it's marked. She hesitated. Maybe I should read it first. He laughed softly. Claire, come on. I just want to be careful. With what? His smile faded just a little. Do you not trust me? The question hit its target. It always did. Of course I trust you, she said quickly. Then sign, he said. She did. The family dinner was supposed to be small. That's what Lydia had said. Just immediate family, nothing formal. Claire spent nearly an hour getting ready anyway. She didn't know why. Maybe she wanted to feel normal. Maybe she wanted someone to notice she was fading. When they arrived, the house was already full. Laughter spilled out through the open doors. Music played softly in the background. Ethan walked ahead of her, already engaged in conversation. Claire followed, feeling like an afterthought. Lydia spotted them first. She wore a fitted dress and a bright smile that didn't reach her eyes. There you are, Lydia said, air-kissing Ethan's cheek. She turned to Claire. You look tired. Claire forced a smile. It's been a long week. Lydia's eyes flicked over her, quick and assessing. You should really take better care of yourself. Before Claire could respond, someone else stepped into view. Vanessa Cole. She stood near the bar, glass of wine in hand, laughing at something Ethan's cousin had said. She looked comfortable, familiar, like she belonged there. Claire's heart skipped. She glanced at Ethan, waiting for surprise, discomfort, something. There was nothing. Vanessa noticed her then and smiled. Not apologetic, not awkward, calm. Claire, she said, walking over. I didn't know you'd be here. The words felt wrong, like the house wasn't Claire's place anymore. Vanessa works with me, Ethan said smoothly. I invited her. Invited her to a family dinner. Claire looked around. Lydia was watching closely. No one spoke. No one questioned it. Oh, Claire said. I didn't realize. Vanessa touched Ethan's arm casually. I hope that's okay. Claire waited, for Lydia to say something, for Ethan to explain, for anyone to defend her place. No one did. Dinner passed in fragments. Claire barely tasted the food. Conversations flowed around her like she wasn't there. Vanessa laughed too loudly. Ethan leaned toward her more than once. Lydia watched Claire with quiet interest, like she was studying a reaction. At one point, Claire excused herself to the bathroom. She locked the door and leaned against it, breathing hard. Something was wrong. Not just with her body, with everything. When she returned, Ethan was gone from his seat. She found him in the hallway speaking quietly with Lydia. They stopped when they saw her. "Everything okay?" Ethan asked. She nodded, even though it wasn't true. As they drove home later, the silence felt heavier than any argument. "You embarrassed yourself tonight," Ethan said finally. She turned toward him. "How?" "You looked uncomfortable, distant." "I was uncomfortable," she said. "You brought your co-worker to a family dinner." "She's more than a co-worker," he replied without thinking. The words hung between them. He glanced at her quickly, then back to the road. "I mean, she's important to the company," he corrected. Claire didn't respond. Her head throbbed. Her chest felt tight. That night she lay awake while Ethan slept beside her. She stared at the ceiling and tried to remember when she'd started feeling alone in her own marriage. Her phone buzzed once on the nightstand. A message from an unknown number. "You should stop asking questions." Her hands shook as she set the phone down. She told herself she was imagining things, that stress was making everything feel worse, that marriage meant enduring rough patches. She didn't know yet that the rough patch was intentional. She didn't know that the people closest to her had already decided what came next. And she didn't know that her body, already weak, was about to be tested in ways she couldn't survive alone. Claire woke before dawn with her heart racing. For a few seconds she didn't know why. Then the weight returned all at once. The dinner, Vanessa's smile, Ethan's voice in the car, the message on her phone. "You should stop asking questions." She sat up slowly, pressing a hand to her chest. Her breathing felt shallow, uneven. The room spun just enough to make her grip the edge of the bed. Beside her, Ethan slept peacefully, one arm thrown over his pillow. He looked younger when he slept, almost harmless. She watched him for a long moment and felt something inside her crack. Not anger, not yet. Something quieter. Disbelief mixed with grief. She slid out of bed and went to the bathroom. Under the bright light, her face looked pale, almost grey. Dark circles ringed her eyes. She barely recognized herself. At breakfast, Ethan was already dressed. He scanned his phone while sipping coffee. "I have meetings all day," he said without looking up. "We're leaving early tomorrow." "Leaving where?" Claire asked. He glanced at her, surprised by the question. "I told you. The place outside the city. Quiet. You need rest." She searched her memory. He had mentioned something vague the night before. She'd been half asleep. "How long?" she asked. "Just a few days," he replied. "No doctors, no stress. You'll feel better once you stop thinking about being sick." The way he said it made her stomach turn. "I have an appointment tomorrow," she said. "I can't just cancel." "Yes, you can," he said calmly. "I already did." Her fork clattered against the plate. "You what?" "I called the office," he said. "They agreed it wasn't urgent." "That wasn't your decision to make," she said, her voice shaking. Ethan finally set his phone down. He looked at her like she was being unreasonable. "This is exactly what I mean," he said. "You're spiraling again." "I'm not spiraling," she said. "I'm scared. There's a difference." He stood, walked around the table and crouched in front of her. He took her hands in his. "Claire," he said softly, "you need to trust me." The words sounded rehearsed. She wanted to pull away, but she didn't. That was her weakness. She still wanted to believe him. Later that afternoon, Lydia stopped by. She didn't call first. She never did. She walked through the house like she owned it, heels clicking sharply on the floor. "You look awful," Lydia said, dropping her purse on the counter. Claire stiffened. "Hello to you too." "I'm concerned," Lydia replied, pouring herself a glass of water. "We all are." "About what?" "About you," Lydia said. "You've been unstable lately." The word echoed in Claire's head. "I'm sick," Claire said. "There's a difference." Lydia smiled thinly. "Doctors love labels. So do lawyers." Claire frowned. "What does that mean?" "Nothing," Lydia said quickly. "Just that Ethan and I have been talking about what's best for the family." The family. Always the family. Ethan entered the room then, his timing too perfect. "We're taking Claire out of town," he said. "Somewhere quiet." Lydia nodded approvingly. "Good. She needs distance." "From what?" Claire asked. "From influence," Lydia said. "From stress, from bad ideas." Claire felt cornered. "I don't like this." Ethan placed a hand on her back. It felt firm, guiding. "You'll thank us later," he said. That evening, Claire packed a small bag. She moved slowly, her head throbbing. She noticed Ethan watching her from the doorway, his expression unreadable. "What about my phone?" she asked. "There's barely any signal out there." "You won't need it," he said. "I'll handle everything." Something in his tone made her pause. "Everything?" she repeated. "Bills, messages, calls," he said. "You just focus on resting." She wanted to argue. She didn't have the strength. The drive the next morning was long and quiet. The city faded behind them, replaced by empty roads and overgrown trees. Claire watched the scenery blur past, unease growing with every mile. "Where exactly is this place?" she asked. "An old property," Ethan said. "It's being renovated." "Why hasn't anyone been there before?" He shrugged. "No reason to." They turned onto a narrow road filled with potholes. The car bounced, jostling her sore body. Her nausea worsened. Finally, they stopped in front of a large, crumbling building. Broken windows, peeling paint. No cars, no signs of life. "This is it?" Claire asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Yes," Ethan said. Her pulse quickened. "This doesn't look safe." "It's quiet," he replied. "That's the point." He got out of the car and opened her door. The air smelled damp, stale. Inside, the building was worse. The lights didn't work. The floors were uneven. Dust coated everything. "I can't stay here," Claire said. "Ethan, please." "You're being dramatic," he said, leading her inside. Her head spun. Her legs felt weak. She stumbled, grabbing his arm. "I don't feel well," she said. "I need help." He guided her to a corner room with a thin mattress on the floor. "Lie down," he said. She tried, but her body gave out. She collapsed, gasping. "Ethan," she whispered. "Something's wrong." He stood over her, looking down. His face was calm, detached. "I'll be back later," he said. "No," she said, panic rising. "Don't leave me." He stepped toward the door. "I'm serious," she said, struggling to sit up. "I can't breathe." He paused, then spoke into his phone. "It's done," he said quietly. "She's not well." A woman's voice responded on the other end. Claire couldn't hear the words, but she knew who it was. Ethan ended the call and looked back at her one last time. "Leave her," he said, his voice flat. "She's already half dead." The door closed. Claire screamed, but the sound barely carried. The darkness pressed in. Her breaths came shallow and fast, her vision blurred. She didn't know how long she lay there. Minutes, hours. Time stopped making sense. Her phone slipped from her hand. The battery died. Outside, the sun rose. The world moved on. No one came back. By morning, Claire Whitman was missing, and the people who left her there believed, with quiet satisfaction, that she hadn't survived the night. If you haven't subscribed yet, we'd love for you to join our community by hitting the subscribe button. Through our stories, we build hope and give a future to children and women who have been abused all over the world. Motivate us by subscribing and turning on your notification bell so you never miss a story that matters. Also, let us know in the comments, where are you watching from, and how did this story speak to you? Claire drifted in and out of something that barely felt like sleep. Darkness pressed against her eyes, heavy and thick, but pain kept pulling her back. Her body burned from the inside out. Every breath scraped her chest like broken glass. She could hear her own heartbeat, loud and uneven, as if it might give up at any second. She didn't know where she was anymore. At times she thought she was still on the cold floor of the building. She could almost feel the grit under her palms, smelled the damp rot in the air. Other times memories broke through instead. Ethan's face, calm and distant. Vanessa's smile. Lydia's voice saying unstable, like it explained everything. She tried to move. Her fingers twitched, then went still, her thoughts scattered. Fear came first, sharp and raw, the simple terror of being alone and helpless. Then rage followed, hot, stubborn, refusing to let go. They left me. The thought repeated itself over and over, like a chant. Not an accident, not a mistake. A choice. Her breathing grew shallow. Black spots swam behind her eyes. She wondered, in a distant way, if this was what dying felt like. Not dramatic, not loud, just quiet and cold and slow. Somewhere far away, a sound cut through the fog. A bark. At first, she thought she imagined it. Her mind had been playing tricks on her for hours. But the sound came again, louder this time, urgent. Her eyelids fluttered. Light stabbed at her eyes and she groaned softly. The bark echoed again, closer now. Outside the building, Max pulled hard against the leash. His body was tense, muscles tight, tail stiff. Daniel Reed frowned down at him. "What is it now?" Daniel asked, irritation creeping into his voice. They had walked this route dozens of times. Quiet streets, empty properties. Daniel liked it that way, predictable, controlled. Max was usually the same, obedient, focused, trained. Tonight he wasn't. The dog let out another sharp bark and lunged toward the broken fence that surrounded the abandoned building. "Max," Daniel said firmly, "no." The dog didn't listen. He dug his paws into the ground and pulled harder, whining low in his throat. His eyes were fixed on the dark structure ahead. Daniel followed his gaze. The building loomed like a shadow, windows black and empty. "There's nothing there," Daniel muttered. Max barked again, louder than before, then strained forward with enough force to surprise him. Daniel sighed. "You've never done this." Max didn't look back. He pulled, insisting, dragging Daniel step by step toward the fence. "Fine," Daniel said under his breath. 5 minutes. He climbed through the broken section of fencing, irritation giving way to unease. The air felt different here, heavy, still. Max bolted ahead as soon as they were inside, leading Daniel through the open doorway and into the darkness. The smell hit him first. Damp, stale, something else beneath it that made his stomach tighten. "Max?" he said again, slower now. The dog stopped abruptly and began to bark non-stop. Daniel stepped closer, his eyes adjusting to the dim light. Then he saw her. She lay crumpled on the floor, unmoving. Her skin looked pale, almost grey. Her hair stuck to her forehead with sweat. "Oh my God," Daniel breathed. He knelt beside her, fingers brushing her neck. A pulse. Weak, but there. "She's alive," he said aloud, though no one was there to hear him. Max sat beside her, whining softly now, tail low, eyes never leaving her face. Daniel pulled out his phone with shaking hands and called for help. His voice stayed controlled, but his heart pounded. "She's barely breathing," he said. "Send an ambulance, now." As he waited, he took off his jacket and carefully placed it over her shoulders. She felt burning hot. "Stay with me," he murmured, though he didn't know why. He didn't know her. He didn't know how she'd ended up here. But someone had left her. The ambulance arrived quickly. Paramedics rushed in, lifting her onto a stretcher. One of them asked Daniel questions, but he shook his head. "I don't know her," he said. "I just found her." At the hospital, the lights were blinding. The smell of antiseptic filled the air. Daniel stood back as doctors and nurses worked around her, moving fast, voices urgent. Max waited beside him, calm now, as if his job was done. A nurse approached Daniel with a clipboard. "Sir, we need her information." "I don't have it," Daniel said. "I want to stay anonymous." The nurse hesitated, then nodded. "All right, we'll register her as a Jane Doe for now." Hours passed. Daniel sat in a chair he didn't remember choosing, hands clasped together. He hadn't planned on this night turning into anything more than a walk and a quiet return home. Max rested his head against Daniel's leg, eyes half closed. Eventually a doctor came out. "She's stable," the doctor said, "but she was severely dehydrated and untreated for too long. Another few hours?" He didn't finish the sentence. Daniel nodded. "Will she wake up?" "Hard to say. Fever's high. Her body's been under a lot of stress." Daniel swallowed. "Does anyone know she's here?" The doctor frowned. "Not yet. We'll contact next of kin once we identify her." Something about that made Daniel uneasy. "Can you wait on that?" he asked. The doctor studied him for a moment, then shrugged. "For now." Later, when the ward quieted, Daniel walked the halls, restless. He stopped at the nurse's station. "Has anyone called about her?" he asked. The nurse checked the computer. "No." "Has anyone reported her missing?" he asked. The nurse shook her head. "Not that we can see." Daniel's jaw tightened. "She was left in an abandoned building." The nurse looked up sharply. "That's concerning." "I thought someone would be looking for her," Daniel said. The nurse clicked through more screens. "There's no urgent report, no spouse calling, no family listed." Daniel felt a chill settle in his chest. Her husband never reported her missing. No one was looking for her urgently. He stared through the glass at the room where she lay unconscious, machines humming softly around her. Someone had wanted her to disappear, and for now, the world believed she already had. Daniel stood at the glass wall for a long time after the nurse walked away. The woman on the bed barely moved. Tubes ran into her arms. A monitor blinked steadily, proving she was still here, still fighting even when she had no idea she was being watched. Max sat at his feet, alert but quiet. "Someone left you," Daniel said under his breath. Saying it out loud made it worse. He had seen cruelty before. Business had taught him that people would do almost anything for money or power. But this felt different. This wasn't just neglect, this was intent. He turned back to the nurse's station. "Can I see her chart?" The nurse hesitated. "Are you family?"
"No," Daniel said honestly. "But I'm the reason she's alive." That seemed to be enough. The nurse handed him a tablet and pointed to the screen. Daniel skimmed the notes. Severe dehydration, infection, untreated condition that should have been monitored weeks ago. "Her husband hasn't called?" Daniel asked again, needing to hear it twice. "No," the nurse said. "If he had, it would be flagged." "What about police?" Daniel asked. "Nothing urgent," she replied. "If someone reported her missing, it wasn't marked high priority." Daniel gave a short, humorless laugh. She was dying in an abandoned building. The nurse's mouth tightened. "Then whoever left her there didn't want her found." That night, Daniel didn't go home. He stayed in the waiting area while Max slept curled at his feet. Every few minutes, Daniel looked up, half expecting someone to rush in, shouting her name, demanding answers. No one came.
Sometime near dawn, her condition worsened. Nurses moved quickly, voices sharpened. Daniel stood back, helpless, watching strangers fight for a life that others had clearly decided wasn't worth saving. When it passed and the crisis eased, the doctor approached him again. "She's strong," the doctor said. "Stronger than she should be, given the circumstances." Daniel nodded. "Can she speak?" "Not yet." Hours later, when the room was quiet again, Daniel was standing beside the bed when her fingers twitched. "Hey," he said softly, unsure if she could hear him. "You're safe." Her eyelids fluttered. Her lips parted. She didn't look at him. She stared at the ceiling like she didn't trust what she was seeing. "Don't," she whispered. Daniel leaned closer. "Don't what?" "Don't tell them," she said, her voice barely there. "Please." "Tell who?" he asked. Her breathing hitched. Panic flickered across her face, even in her weak state. "My husband," she whispered. "His family."
Daniel felt his chest tighten. "They don't know you're here." Her eyes finally moved to his. They were glassy but sharp with fear. "Keep it that way," she said. "If they know, they'll finish it." The words sent a chill through him. "You're safe," he said again, though he wasn't sure how much of that was true. Her grip tightened weakly on the sheet. "Promise me." Daniel didn't answer right away. He had never made promises lightly. Promises had consequences. But looking at her, pale and shaking, he understood something clearly. If the people who were supposed to protect her had wanted her dead, then telling them she survived would be the most dangerous thing he could do. "I promise," he said finally. Her eyes closed, her hand relaxed. She slipped back into unconsciousness, as if that promise was the last thing she needed to hear. The next morning, Daniel made calls. Not to police, not to her family,
To his lawyer, to a private investigator he trusted, to the hospital administration. He didn't explain everything. He didn't need to. By the end of the day, the woman in the bed had a new name in the system, a temporary one. No last name that could be traced. Daniel stood with the administrator as the changes were made. "This will delay notifications," the man said carefully. "Eventually, someone might ask questions." "Eventually," Daniel replied. "Not now." The administrator nodded. Money had a way of simplifying morals. When Daniel returned to her room, she was sleeping more peacefully. Her fever had broken. Colour had returned to her face. Max sat beside the bed, watching her like a guard. Daniel pulled a chair closer and sat down. "I don't know who you are," he said quietly, "but someone decided you didn't matter." He shook his head. "They were wrong." Days passed. News trickled in through Daniel's investigator. A woman reported missing briefly, then quietly removed from active searches. No urgency, no press, no family appeals. A death certificate was being discussed, not finalized, but assumed. "She's being written off," the investigator said over the phone, "like she was never meant to come back." Daniel looked through the glass at the sleeping woman. "Good," he said. "Let them think that." Outside the hospital, the world moved on. Inside, Claire Whitman survived under another name. And to the people who abandoned her in the dark, she was already gone. Dead, as planned. Claire understood something new as her body healed. Being alive didn't mean being present. She could breathe again. She could walk the length of the room without help. Her hands no longer shook when she lifted a glass of water. On the surface, she was recovering, but outside these walls, her life was already moving on without her. Daniel didn't tell her everything at once. He learned quickly that truth needed pacing. Too much too fast would break her, not because she was weak, but because grief didn't rush. It settled in layers. The first thing he showed her was small, a short legal notice on a private database. Nothing dramatic, no headlines, just a line of text. Claire Whitman, status, presumed deceased. She stared at it for a long time. "So that's it," she said finally. Daniel nodded. Ethan filed quietly. No press, no investigation. "He didn't even wait," she said. "No," Daniel replied. "He didn't." She expected anger. She expected tears. What came instead was numbness, the kind that made her feel hollow and distant, like she was watching someone else's life close without her permission. Over the next few days, more pieces surfaced. Daniel's investigator sent photos, time-stamped, clear, movers outside her house. Her house. Men carrying out furniture she had chosen, boxes labelled with her handwriting, lamps she'd bought on trips, a chair she used to sit in every morning. "They didn't store anything," Daniel said quietly. "They sorted." "Sorted," she repeated. "Kept what was valuable, disposed of the rest." Claire's throat tightened. "Disposable how? Donation centres? Trash pickup?" She looked away. "I wasn't even gone a week." "They didn't want reminders," Daniel said. She nodded slowly. It made sense in a terrible way. Another day, another image. Vanessa standing in the kitchen, hair loose, laughing, holding a mug Claire recognized instantly. "That's mine," Claire said. Daniel watched her carefully. "Yes." "She moved in fast." "She didn't move in," Daniel corrected. "She was already halfway there." The realization hit harder than she expected. At night, Claire lay awake in the quiet room Daniel had arranged for her recovery. The place was comfortable but anonymous. No personal items, no history. It felt temporary, like her existence. She imagined Ethan sleeping in their bed, Vanessa in her place, Lydia visiting, approving, satisfied. She wondered if anyone had cried, even briefly. One afternoon, she asked Daniel a question she'd been holding back. "What did he say?" she asked. "When it happened?"
Daniel didn't pretend not to understand. He said it was unfortunate. Claire almost laughed. Almost. That's it. He expressed concern about appearances, Daniel said. About the company, about closure. Not about me, she said. No, Daniel replied. The answer settled deep inside her. As her strength returned, Daniel allowed her limited access to the outside world. Carefully chosen moments, short updates, never live footage. She saw a photo from a social event. Ethan in a dark suit, Vanessa at his side, Lydia nearby. They looked relaxed, happy. Claire closed the tablet and set it down with shaking hands. I was sick, she said quietly. I needed help. Daniel said nothing. Another day, the investigator returned with a file, thinner than the others. Daniel reviewed it first. Ethan closed your personal accounts, he said. Joint ones too. Claire nodded. Of course he did. He cited necessity, Daniel continued. Estate management, debt prevention. Was there debt? She asked. No. She let out a slow breath. So he erased me financially too? Yes. The word erased followed her everywhere now. She felt it when she brushed her hair in the morning, when she looked at her reflection and realized no one outside this space knew she still existed, when she remembered the message on her phone before everything ended. You should stop asking questions. They hadn't wanted her loud, or visible, or alive. That night, Claire sat alone by the window, wrapped in a blanket. The city lights in the distance looked unreal, like something from another life. Daniel joined her quietly. They're comfortable, he said. She didn't ask who he meant. Of course they are. They believe it's over. Claire stared out into the dark. That's the part that hurts the most. Which part? Daniel asked. That they didn't hesitate, she said. Not even a little. Daniel didn't argue. She closed her eyes. For a moment she let herself feel it all, the loss, the betrayal, the truth she had avoided for years. When she opened them again, her voice was steady. What else don't I know yet? Daniel studied her face. Some things. Tell me later, she said, when I'm ready. He nodded. Claire remained by the window long after he left. Her body was healing, her name was gone, her life had been replaced, and somewhere out there, the people who had abandoned her were sleeping easily, convinced they had won. Claire felt stronger the next morning, and that scared her more than the weakness ever had. Strength meant clarity, and clarity meant there was no hiding from what she already knew. Daniel didn't bring updates that day. He waited. He watched her move around the room, slow but steady, like someone learning a new body. When she finished a short walk and sat down, he finally spoke. There's more, he said. She nodded. I know. He motioned for her to sit at the table. Max lay nearby, eyes half open, listening. Daniel didn't soften his voice. He had learned she didn't need that anymore. The investigator confirmed several insurance policies, he said. They were revised recently. Your name removed from decision authority. Ethan listed as sole beneficiary. Claire stared at the tabletop. How recently? Within weeks of the night he left you. Her chest tightened. So before? Yes. She swallowed. Go on. The policies were triggered almost immediately after you were declared presumed dead, Daniel continued. No waiting period. No hesitation. Claire's hands curled slowly into fists. So he didn't just take what was already his, she said.
He prepared for it.
Yes. A bitter laugh slipped out. He always liked being prepared. Daniel reached for a folder and slid it across the table. There's also evidence of financial transfers already lined up. Accounts opened in advance. Funds moving quietly. She didn't open the folder yet. She didn't need to. The picture was already clear.
They planned this,
she said. Daniel nodded. It wasn't desperation. It was structure. Her heart pounded harder now, not from fear, but from something sharper.
What about my medical care?
She asked.
The appointments he cancelled. The meds he told me to stop.
The room went quiet. Daniel held her gaze. That wasn't negligence. Her breath caught.
See it.
It was intentional, he said. The investigator confirmed communications. Advice from Lydia. Pressure to downplay your condition. Delay treatment. Claire closed her eyes. The memories rushed back. Ethan telling her she was imagining things. Lydia calling her unstable. Being made to feel difficult for wanting help. They didn't just leave me to die, she said slowly. Daniel waited. They weakened me first, she finished, so I couldn't fight back. The truth settled like a weight in her chest, heavy, crushing, real. For a long time, neither of them spoke. When Claire finally opened her eyes, something in her expression had changed. The softness was gone. In its place was a quiet focus that made Daniel sit straighter. I want to hear it, she said. Hear what? He asked. What they say when they think no one's listening. Daniel studied her carefully. You don't have to. I do, she replied. I need to know how little I meant to them. He hesitated only a moment, then reached into his pocket and pulled out a small device. Audio only, he said. No names attached. She took it without hesitation. Her thumb hovered over the button. For a second, doubt flickered across her face. Not fear, something closer to grief. Then she pressed play. Lydia's voice came through first, calm, controlled, almost bored. It was handled cleanly, Lydia said. Exactly how we planned. Claire's stomach twisted. Vanessa laughed softly. Honestly, I was worried for a moment, but it all worked out. There was no mess, Lydia continued. No witnesses, no complications. Ethan did what he had to do, Vanessa said. It's not like she gave him much choice. Claire's jaw tightened. People like her cling, Lydia replied. They don't know when to let go. Vanessa laughed again. Well, the problem solved itself. Claire's breathing grew shallow, but she didn't stop the recording. You should have seen the house, Vanessa went on. Once her things were gone, it felt lighter. As it should, Lydia said. She was a liability. A sick one, Vanessa added. That never ends well. There was a pause. Then Vanessa's voice again, almost playful. At least we were lucky, she said. If she'd lasted another week, things might have gotten complicated. Lydia hummed in agreement. Luck favors preparation. The recording ended. The room felt smaller after that. Tighter, like the air itself had thickened. Claire lowered the device slowly and set it on the table. For a moment she didn't move at all. Daniel watched her carefully. Claire? She raised a hand, stopping him. Her hands were steady now. They joked, she said quietly. Yes, Daniel replied. They talked about my death like it was housekeeping. Daniel didn't answer. There was nothing left to explain. Claire stood up,
Her legs didn't shake.
I used to wonder if I was imagining the cruelty, she said. If I was too sensitive, too emotional.
She let out a slow breath.
I wasn't.
No, Daniel said.
They didn't just want me gone, she continued. They wanted it clean, profitable, easy.
She looked at him then, eyes sharp, clear, awake in a way they hadn't been before.
They think I'm dead, she said.
Yes.
They think they won.
Daniel nodded once. They do.
Claire straightened her shoulders. Good, she said.
Daniel felt something shift in the room. What do you want to do? He asked. She didn't answer right away. She walked to the window and looked out at the city, at the people moving freely below, living unaware. When she turned back, her voice was calm.
Surviving isn't enough,
she said. Daniel waited.
They erased me,
she continued.
They buried me without a body. They built their future on my silence.
She met his eyes.
I won't stay silent.
The words weren't loud. They didn't need to be. In that moment, Claire Whitman was no longer just a woman who had lived through betrayal. She was someone who had decided what came next. And somewhere far away, the people who believed they had handled everything cleanly were about to learn what happens when the dead refused to stay gone. Claire had imagined this moment in fragments, never all at once, never clearly, just flashes that came to her late at night or during quiet mornings when the world felt steady again. Now it was real. The courthouse hallway buzzed with low conversation, polished shoes echoing against the floor. Lawyers moved with purpose. Assistants whispered into phones. Everything felt normal, controlled, predictable. Ethan liked predictable. Claire stood just outside the doors, her heart steady, her breathing calm. Daniel stood beside her, quiet, solid. Max waited a few steps back with a handler, alert and still, as if he understood
exactly where he was and why it mattered. You ready? Daniel asked. Claire nodded once.
They've had enough time to be comfortable.
Daniel gave a small nod. Then let's not keep them waiting. Inside the hearing room, Ethan sat at the long table with his lawyer, relaxed, one ankle resting over his knee. Lydia sat just behind him, scrolling through her phone, her expression bored. This was supposed to be routine. Final paperwork, asset confirmations, the closing of a chapter already written. Vanessa wasn't required to be there, but she came anyway. She sat near the aisle, dressed carefully, hair perfect, eyes already scanning the room like she was choosing her future seat. The judge hadn't entered yet. People chatted quietly. Ethan leaned toward Lydia. Once this is done, we can finally stop pretending. Lydia smirked.
It's been clean so far. No noise.
Vanessa leaned over.
I still can't believe how smoothly it worked.
Ethan smiled faintly. Planning matters. The doors at the back of the room opened. At first, no one noticed. It took a second. Then another. The sound of footsteps. Someone whispered. Heads began to turn. Claire walked in. She didn't rush. She didn't hesitate. She wore a simple dress, no jewelry, no makeup meant to soften her face. She looked like herself, alive, present, unmistakable. Ethan's smile vanished. His body went still like something inside him had short-circuited. His hand froze mid-motion, fingers still touching the table. Lydia's phone slipped from her hand and hit the floor. Vanessa stood up so fast her chair scraped loudly behind her.
No,
Vanessa whispered. Claire kept walking, Every step felt grounded, real. She didn't look at them yet. She walked straight to the front with Daniel beside her, calm as if she belonged there, as if she always had. The judge entered moments later, confusion clear on his face as he took in the room.
"Everyone seated," he said. No one moved. The judge's eyes landed on Claire. "Is there an issue?"
Daniel spoke calmly. "Yes, Your Honor. A significant one."
Claire finally turned. She looked at Ethan. For the first time since the night he left her on the floor, she saw fear in his eyes. Real fear.
"You look surprised," she said.
Ethan's mouth opened, then closed. His lawyer leaned in, whispering urgently. Lydia recovered first. She always did.
"This is a mistake," she said sharply. "That woman is alive,"
Claire said simply.
"which makes everything you filed false."
The judge raised a hand. One at a time. Daniel stepped forward. "Your Honor, my client was presumed deceased under suspicious circumstances. She survived an attempted abandonment that nearly killed her." Murmurs filled the room. Ethan finally found his voice.
"This is insane," he said. "She disappeared. We searched."
Claire met his gaze.
"You left me in a building with no lights, no phone, and no intention of coming back."
"That's not true," Ethan snapped. "You were unstable. You needed space." Daniel slid a folder onto the table. Timeline 1. The judge nodded. "Proceed." Daniel opened the folder. On this date, Ethan Whitman cancelled his wife's medical appointments. On this date, he transferred control of her accounts. On this date, he drove her to an abandoned property under false pretenses. Vanessa shook her head.
"You can't prove that."
Daniel didn't look at her. "We can." He placed photographs on the table. The building, the timestamps, the location data from Ethan's car. The room went silent. Claire spoke again, her voice steady.
"You told me I was imagining things. You told me to stop treatment. You told me to rest."
She paused.
"You didn't expect me to last the night."
Ethan slammed his hand on the table. "This is a setup!" The judge's expression hardened. "Sit down, Mr. Whitman." Daniel continued. Timeline 2. Insurance policies revised weeks before the incident. Sole beneficiary, Ethan Whitman. Triggered immediately after a presumption of death was filed. Lydia stood. "That's standard estate planning." Daniel looked at her calmly. "Not when paired with medical neglect, abandonment, and prearranged transfers." The judge leaned forward. "Insurance fraud is a serious claim." Daniel nodded. "Which is why we brought documentation." He slid another folder forward. Claire watched them carefully now. Vanessa's hands trembled. Lydia's jaw clenched. Ethan's confidence was gone, replaced by something frantic. Daniel spoke evenly. "This wasn't an accident. It wasn't panic. It was preparation." Claire took a breath. "I didn't disappear," she said. "I was erased." She turned to Lydia. "You called me a liability." Lydia said nothing. Claire looked at Vanessa. "You called my death lucky." Vanessa's face drained of colour. "And you," Claire said, finally looking back at Ethan. "You were so sure I was dead." She stepped closer. "You never planned for me to come back." The judge raised his hand again, voice firm. "This hearing is suspended pending investigation." Ethan's lawyer whispered urgently. Vanessa began to cry quietly. Lydia stared straight ahead, her mask cracking. Claire stepped back beside Daniel. This wasn't over yet, not even close. But the silence in the room told her everything she needed to know. The truth had finally entered the building, and it wasn't leaving quietly. The room emptied slowly after that, not because anyone wanted to stay, but because no one knew what to say. Claire sat quietly while the judge's clerks collected documents and lawyers whispered urgently into phones. Ethan was escorted out first, his confidence completely gone now. His shoulders
Sagged, his eyes unfocused, like the ground beneath him had finally collapsed. Lydia followed, her face stiff, jaw tight, already calculating what version of the truth might still save her. Vanessa didn't move at all. She remained seated, staring at the table as if it had betrayed her. When she finally stood, her legs trembled. She looked at Claire once, her mouth opening as if to speak, then closing again. There was nothing left to say. Claire watched them all leave without satisfaction. Not yet. The real reckoning didn't happen in that room. It came after. The investigation moved fast, faster than Ethan ever expected. Once the paperwork unraveled, everything else followed. Emails, call logs, financial trails that told a story too clean to be innocent. Daniel stayed close but never stepped in front of her. This wasn't his victory. He made sure of that. Claire testified calmly, clearly, without anger.
She described the appointments that had been cancelled without her consent.
The medication she'd been told to stop. The way she'd been driven to the building under the promise of care and privacy. The moment she realized she had been left there to die. The room had been silent then, too. Ethan's lawyer tried to frame it as a misunderstanding, stress, fear, a complicated marriage. The facts didn't bend. Location data placed Ethan at the site. Surveillance showed no return. The insurance revisions lined up perfectly with her medical decline. The investigators' recordings destroyed any claim of innocence. When the charges came, they were precise. Attempted murder through abandonment, insurance fraud, financial exploitation, conspiracy. Ethan didn't look at Claire when the verdicts were read. He stared straight ahead, jaw tight, as if refusing to acknowledge her presence might still undo everything.
Lydia tried a different tactic.
She cried. She claimed concern. She said she had only advised, never ordered. The recordings said otherwise. Her role as architect was laid bare. The careful language, the instructions to keep things clean, the satisfaction in believing it was finished. The family she had protected so fiercely disowned her quietly. No statements, no defense, just distance. Vanessa walked away with nothing. No money, no house, no protection. When the accounts froze, she vanished just as quickly as she'd appeared, leaving behind a life she thought she'd inherited. Claire watched it all with a strange calm. The anger had burned itself out already. What remained was something steadier, something colder. Truth. On the day everything finally ended, Claire stood in a quiet hallway outside the courtroom. Daniel stood beside her. Max sat at her feet, calm and patient. "Do you want to say anything?" Daniel asked. She thought for a moment.
"No," she said. "They've heard enough." Inside, Ethan was led away. The doors closed behind him with a sound that felt final. Claire didn't flinch. Later, reporters gathered outside. Cameras flashed. Questions flew. "How does it feel to come back from the dead? Do you forgive them? Was this about revenge?" Claire paused only once. She stepped forward just enough to be seen, just enough to be heard. "You were so sure I was dead," she said evenly. "You never planned for me to come back." Then she turned away. Daniel opened the door for her, Max stood and followed, tail low, steady, loyal. They walked out together. Not rescued, reclaimed.